What's up, Marvel fans? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be discussing what I felt was the biggest problem with Marvel's newest MCU movie, Thor: Love and Thunder. So first of all, I just want to say there will be spoilers for Thor: Love and Thunder, so if you haven't seen that movie yet, go check that out and then come back here and watch this. I will say this, I did enjoy the movie as a standalone Thor movie. I don't think it's the best Thor movie that they've made so far. I still think Ragnarok was the best one, and I've been seeing online and everything else. I guess a lot of people agree with that Ragnarok is the best Thor movie we've seen. I think this one is like second. It's definitely better than like the Dark World and even the original Thor movie. But even with that, there still was a lot of problems in this movie, and based off what I've seen from critics and everything else, it seems like a lot of people agree on these issues. But I'm going to tackle what I felt was the biggest problem with this movie, and that was I don't think Gore was the right villain for this movie. Mostly because we don't get a whole lot of time with Gore in this movie, anyways. Like, Marvel went out of their way to make this a comedy, pretty much. Like, it was more of a comedy than Ragnarok was. And a lot of it, I felt, could have been cut out in favor of showing more scenes with Gore the God Butcher, or more scenes with him actually fighting and killing the gods. We didn't get enough of that in this movie because they wanted to make time for, like, the side plot with Thor and Jane and New Asgard and all that other stuff, and all these comedy bits throughout the whole movie. And even the Guardians didn't really need to. We didn't need this whole scene with the Guardians and all that stuff because they just left at the end. And I just feel like maybe Gore wasn't the right choice for this. Like, yeah, I get it. He's the God Butcher. He wants to kill all the gods, and Thor is a god, so that's like a perfect match. And Thor learns in this movie that he was killing the gods, so that made Thor want to go after Gore. But I don't feel like Gore was the right choice, especially since they didn't really give us enough time with him for us to really understand him as a villain and understand how powerful he was like they did with Hela in Ragnarok. The real villain I think they should have made for this movie is Zeus and Hercules. Because we see them in this movie. Thor goes to Zeus to warn him about Gore and to ask for his help, and Zeus just kind of ignores it and blows him off. Then Thor ends up like fighting with Zeus and actually kind of kills him. Or as we see in the end credits scene, he was only like injured from the fight, not really killed. And in the end credits scene, he sends Hercules to go kill Thor because he says that people are starting to worship their so-called superheroes instead of worshiping and fearing the gods, and he wants them to start fearing them again. And if he kills Thor and makes an example of Thor, then that will make the people fear the gods again and go to them for help because they'll realize their heroes aren't good enough. And that's Zeus's whole thing. He realizes this at the end and he becomes like a true villain. But I feel like that would have been an interesting story for this movie. Like, let's say, for example, Hercules is the villain throughout the whole movie that's going around and killing people that Thor knows to sort of get Thor's attention. Maybe he even goes to New Asgard and runs into Jane and everything. You can still keep Jane Foster in there and all that stuff. Maybe not even. I think with this version of the story, it might have been a little different. Maybe we didn't need the Jane Foster stuff just yet. That could have been saved for a future movie or something. But let's say Hercules is going around trying to get Thor's attention because he wants to kill Thor, because he was sent by Zeus to kill Thor. But then Thor goes to Zeus for help, like, hey, your son is going crazy, and Zeus acts like he has no clue what's going on. So maybe Zeus goes with Thor to help him, like he can reason with his son and everything else. Thor gets to partner up with Zeus for a little bit, his idol, his new father figure, basically. And then Zeus completely turns the tables, and we realize that Zeus actually sent Hercules to kill Thor because, let's say, he made this realization a long time ago that people are starting to worship the superheroes instead of the gods, and he wants to get their attention again. He wants them to realize their heroes aren't good enough, and you need to worship and fear us again. And I think that would have been a more interesting plot. And you can have all the, you can still add in the humor and everything as Thor adventures out to find Zeus and all that stuff. But I think that would have been a more interesting story and an interesting dynamic. Thor versus Hercules. I guess it's happened in the comics. And maybe even have Hercules realize that his father is kind of insane and he also becomes a good guy out of this by the end. Maybe he helps Thor kill Zeus or something, or at least defeat Zeus. And then they could have had the end credit scene be that Zeus then meets Gore the God Butcher, and he sends Gore to kill Hercules and kill Thor and maybe kill all the other gods so that Zeus can take over. Like maybe he goes truly insane by the end of this, and he wants to be the god that everyone fears, so he recruits Gore for that, and then that can set up a future movie with Gore as the villain there, and then we get Gore as a more threatening presence. We still see in this movie that it looks like Thor is going to be fighting Hercules at some point, maybe even the other gods as well. Like maybe Zeus will send all the other gods after Thor because of what he did in this movie. I just feel like if they had done more with Gore in this movie, that maybe it would have felt, he would have felt more like a threat, because all we really see him do, he kills one god when he first gets the Necrosword, and then we are told throughout the movie that he's killed these other gods. We are shown the gods are dead, but we don't actually see Gore do anything. And I feel like that took away from his true threat. Like if you think back to Thor Ragnarok, all the scenes with Hela established how truly powerful she was. She killed all these Asgardian soldiers and everything by herself. She killed the Warriors 3 by herself. She was destroying the temple and revealing the true nature of what Asgard used to be and Odin's secrets and everything else. She did all that on her own, and the only way Thor was able to beat her was to allow Surtur to destroy Asgard, which has a long-lasting effect throughout the rest of the MCU. So that makes her a truly threatening villain, and we don't see that here with Gore, but I feel like we could have seen that with, if this had been reversed and like Zeus had been the villain, because he's starting to go insane. He's realizing people aren't worshiping him or the other gods anymore. Maybe he's reasoning with some of the other gods. You could get this could spin off into the next Avengers movie, like Avengers versus the Gods or something, where they're going after Thor, but this also affects the rest of the universe because all the gods are starting to kill people now or whatever. I feel like that could have been a more interesting aspect to explore, but instead they put too much focus on the comedy aspect of this instead of the more serious threat of Gore the God Butcher, which is why I feel like he wasn't the best villain choice for this movie. He felt just like, to me, he felt like another version of Malekith, basically, where he was just here for this one movie just to die at the end. This one at least had a more meaningful end, I guess, because now Thor is going to take care of Gore's daughter now, and she has her own powers, and so that will still have a long-lasting effect on the MCU, but I just feel like it wasn't enough to really establish Gore as like this truly menacing figure that the trailers seem to be portraying him as. And I feel like they kind of also wasted Jane Foster in this movie a little bit as well, because she ends up dying by the end of this. So, imagine if Hercules or Zeus were the villain of this and they killed Thor in this movie, and that leaves Jane to be the new Thor or something like that. That could have been a direction they went with it as well. But I feel like they didn't do enough with any of that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. If you've seen this movie, did you enjoy it? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the finale of the Miss Marvel series as well. So if you're a fan of Marvel, keep an eye out for that as well. Thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.
Subscribe.